Hi, everyone. Welcome. So glad you're here with us today. We'll give everyone just a moment to
Can I get the full thing?
get connected. Hopefully you can see me and hear me.
Hi,
I see Holly might not be connected to audio yet.
so what's up?
All right, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself.
Oh, about what?
I hear some chatter. If you wouldn't mind muting.
I have you first, Bert? Okay. So let me.
All right, we'll do that. I'm glad to see some faces from earlier today on our virtual PD. Looks like we're just adding a few more folks.
Hi, Katie, this is Sue Rosinski. Can you see me? Because I don't feel like I'm coming up.
Your video is off, but I do hear you.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you very much.
There we go. We see you. All right. Well, welcome everyone. We are so glad to have you here today. Some of you have been on our adventure in the forest and at the mill. Today, you're going to get another chance. Even if you have or have not joined us, you're going to get a little different spin on our conversation today about the timber industry. We'll have some familiar faces if you've been with us, and we'll get to dig in a little bit deeper. I know your students had amazing questions during our virtual field trips, but today's also your chance to get all of your questions asked. Because we are going to be, we're already outside and we have our guests with us, at our host at Gutchess Lumber in Courtland, New York. We are going to actually jump right in and head up our introductions afterwards. I want you to first get a chance to understand and take a look at what's happening at their mill site as they're finishing up their day. So buckle up, everyone. We are headed in for our virtual field trip portion of this virtual PD, and be sure to unmute yourself or put your questions in the chat, and we'll be able to communicate that to our hosts. So I am really excited. I'm going to switch the spotlight over. Jeremiah Best is in the field. He'll be leading us through this experience, but we are with John Lyon today, and John is the general manager of Gutchess Lumber and knows the ins and outs of this mill. So hi, John, welcome, and so glad to introduce you to our teachers today.
Thank you. I appreciate you joining us today. What you're looking at right here is our starting point of the logs coming into the mill, coming into the yard, being unloaded by several of these trucks, sorting the logs by species. And then after they're sorted by species, they are scaled by guys that will come through and give the logs a grade, and then ensure the species are separated properly. And then this loader you see out front here is taking the species and piling them in a row according to the species out in the log yard. And at a later time, these logs will be sawn mill according to the row. And the reason why we do the scaling of the logs is so we know what value you put on the logs and what value we need to get out of the logs to ensure that we are getting all the yield we can out of the logs and making lumber. Some of these red oak that you see right here in front of us, you can see some discoloration right here where the log is getting to the point where it's at the end of its life, to where now we're able to utilize the lumber before it does die off completely. And there are some stress cracks in there just because of the age. And the other logs that we have here do have some cracks, but we're able to utilize those in our sawing process in the mill.
So we're really starting in the middle of this process. We are all going to get a chance to move to the woods a little bit later and talk about how these logs are harvested, but this is really the step where you're processing for people who will eventually use these to create hardwood products that we find in our everyday lives. So thinking about the end in mind, who's your target market?
We will sell our lumber to any industry that would like to use their the lumber for furniture, for molding, for flooring, for plywood.
And not all of this lumber is staying here in the States. Where does your lumber eventually end up? What other countries?
We're in a global market. China is a big buyer of our lumber, which brings the cost and the revenue back into the United States, and it helps our community here in Courtland.
And how long do these logs that we're looking at, how long do they actually stay here in the yard? What kind of, how, I see some with snow on them, some without snow. Do they move pretty quickly, or do you have them sitting for a while?
For this time of year, there's very little spoilage in the logs, so therefore we can keep them in the yard for a longer period of time. But for the most part, we try to get this whole yard rotated within so 4 to 5 weeks, we should be able to get the logs that come in through the mill. In the summertime, due to the warmer weather, we will put water on the logs, and this will help eliminate the stain and the degrade of the logs. So therefore, we still will rotate them within a 4 to 5 week period.
Now, what process are we looking at next? What's happening over here? Is this the first step?
Yes, after the logs are put in the rows and we predetermine what species we want to run in the mill, the loaders will bring the logs down to this workstation where the picker will place them on the conveyor in a single file line to be able to feed those into the debarker.
So that conveyor belt is moving the logs into that building. And as we step inside to see what's happening, could you talk a little bit about what happens to that bark that's taken off the outside of the trees?
The bark is utilized for when we ship it out of here for mulch that you'd find in your gardens, in your flower beds, mulch around your house. It's ground after it leaves here. It is ground again in another department, another company, to be able to sell this.
And so what's happening now? I see a roller and I see a lot of action happening inside that cage.
Now there's an operator that is controlling the rolls that are going up and down, and it's holding down pressure on the logs to be able to keep it from moving as it's going through the drum that's taking the bark off. He is able to control the pressure of the debarker arms to be able to get the bark off, but yet not damage the wood fiber on the log itself.
So I think it's really interesting that you have this mill and you have this byproduct, and that there are other industries, local to you that are making their living off of your byproduct. And I think that's a theme that our teachers are going to hear quite a bit throughout this conversation with you is that, you know, you are utilizing every single piece of these trees that come in. I think that makes us feel really good about the lumber industry, at least for me.
Yes, every part of this log is utilized all the way through to where it becomes the sawdust we utilize to fuel our boilers to be able to kiln dry our lumber. The product that does not make the lumber will be chipped in our chipper, and out will be utilized in a chipboard plants. They'll be used for pellets that you'd burn in pellet stoves. So there's many more uses for our chips that we also make in our process.
So the operator that's moving these through, what type of training does that take for this job?
It's more of a hand-eye coordination. He has many buttons that he has to control at one time to be able to control and to move the log through the machine. And to be able to make sure that the logs that he's bringing into the mill are the quality of logs that we desire to be able to get a good product out of.
Great. So as we leave this facility and we look to the other side to see what the log looks like once it is debarked. Let's talk a little bit about the impact that Gutchess has in your Courtland community. About how many people are employed at your facility?
Just in this site here, we're around 160, 170 employees at this site that are working in our dry line and in our mill. We're running 2 shifts in both the dry line that deals with the kiln dried lumber, and here in the mill we also have 2 shifts. Here you'll see the logs that are being stacked up for our second shift tonight. We'll run the day shift will be a 9-hour shift. The night shift will be a 8-hour shift. We run 40 to 45 hours a week. It all depends on what the needs are for our production.
I will say when we had our first field trip this morning at 10:30, there were not this many logs here. So you have stockpiled through the day.
Yes. Yeah, we'll typically try to get on the ground anywhere from 800 to 1,000 logs. All depends on the size. You'll notice there are some pretty good sized logs here. So there's a good volume here today. Here's one log that we that had some decay to it, some rot. So this log is definitely has been a good log to be able to take and still get some value out of it before it has really rotted completely.
Now, I think it's really interesting taking a look at the barcodes that are on your tree, and what is the purpose of those?
These will identify the log when they come in, where the scalers will place on there to be able to track these logs and find out if we're getting the proper value of each log. And then if we can find the data of a consistent run, if we're getting the proper footage out of them. Here you're seeing the metal detector. We're ensuring that there's no metal in our logs going into the mill to limit the damage to the saws, such as nails, barbed wire, tree stand spikes.
I think that was a really interesting concept for our students that just like you go through a metal detector at the airport or in a county or government building, the trees have to go through a metal detector also. And I know we're going to be walking in to learn more about your saws and the investment of humans, machines, and the actual product itself. But it's really for, that metal detector could save, I'm sure, a few $100s.
Yeah, it's typically a brand new saw would cost us up to $800 per saw. And now you'll be coming into our file and we'll resharpen our saws. After an 8-hour run time, we will bring these saws in and recondition the saws. And this is just one phase of that reconditioning process. The saws will go around this grinder several times until we get to the desired quality of the tooth that we'll be putting back out on the band mill.
And so, like you said, this saw is going through this process after 8 hours. Then it
That's
gets
correct.
put back on.
Yeah. This file here is ensuring that the saw is consistent as far as flat and it has no twist or
So if there was a twist found or any pulling or deformity, what happens then?
once he finds that and finds an inconsistency, he'll be able to use a roller to be able to roll out that bump in the saw or the inconsistency in the saw. There's an anvil right there also, and he'll use a hammer to pound out any inconsistencies also in the saw.
And we see some automation, but we also see humans overseeing the process. How much of your lumber mill is automated and how much is controlled by human capital?
We do have, over the years, we have had more and more automation. These grinders are set up and they do have the ability to run on their own, but they do have to be readjusted with the operators for these. There is one machine over here to our left that has the ability to be automated, to where once it's set up, it will bench that saw automatically, like the first individual that you first seen that was trying to flatten out the saw. So there is some automation in here to the filing room.
So as we move back to thinking about our logs, I mean, teachers, any questions that you have? What are you curious about? Now, John, as we look at your employees and you have about 160 person workforce, do you expect that employees that you're getting from your local community, that they have experience in milling or in forestry? What's your expectation?
What we're looking for is individuals with drive, motivation, the desire to want to come to work every day. And Gutchess Lumber has trained, for the most part, in this sawmill, all their employees. With our the training programs we have, it does take several years to get a filer to the point where he has the ability to be successful with the quality that we expect out of this filing room.
And we do have a question. What tree species has had the greatest demand?
Hard maple is a very demanding and our most sought after species here. But we do hard maple, red oak, white oak, ash, cherry are our standard hardwood lumber here.
So a couple of questions that are coming in. Jen wants to know about how many machines does a piece of lumber have to go through from start to finish?
Well, there's probably over 50 pieces when it comes to conveyors and workstations. There's probably 50 pieces of equipment that this lumber will touch before it gets out to be stacked in this mill.
So Susan also has a question. She said, you know, I heard that these logs in your facility, they're going for flooring, furniture, molding. She was curious, are there specific mills that make pencils, or do the leftover pieces of your lumber go to another facility to be used to make pencils?
No, this is a hardwood mill. For the pencils, we generally just keep it stick to the molding, the flooring. Most of our small pieces will go into chipper to make our chip product.
All right, so what are we looking at first? It's kind of tough to see, Jeremiah, through the cage, just so you know.
This is our head saw that's taking a log and taking a round log and making 4 square sides to it. And then he's also taking a few boards off. And once that log gets the 4 sides, that becomes what we call a cant. And therefore that cant will go up to another saw that will be able to produce more boards.
And we can't see at the moment, but that's a human operating that saw. Is that right?
Yes, he's down there. We do have some optimization on this carriage. We have a scanner that will help the sawyer make a decision on how to set that log to get the most value out of that first cut. That first space that was just cut right there was determined by an optimizer, a scanner. And then after that point, the sawyer is determining what thickness of board is coming off that log.
We have a question about how communication works in the mill. One of our teachers asked, is there some feedback mechanism for the bark operator, from the debarker, or from somebody who's loading the logs, to let the sawyer know what log is coming, or is that all detected by a sensor and then relayed to the operator?
All these logs that come into this mill are pre-sorted. So every log is an oak log right now at this point. So the logs that they're debarking can come in here without any further sorting. But we do use, for communication, we do have two-way radios in a saw cab and throughout the mill. So there is quite a bit of communication that goes on when there becomes an issue, whether it's a quality issue or a machine down issue.
So what's happening in that little booth right now is somebody's using a little joystick, right, to move that log, and just like we saw in the debarker. Is that similar to what's happening right now?
In the resaw right here, there's
Yes.
an operator in there that, yeah.
Now,
He has controls in that saw that will be able to determine what thickness of board that he takes.
So another question that came up was about how long does the average saw blade last? Will it deteriorate based on the species of the tree going through the saw?
we try to get approximately 5 to 6 months out of the saw. All depends on if there's any damage to the hardware.
So what's next after this? So we're seeing the Sawyer create the cant, kicking off one of those edge pieces. And then where do we go next?
Once that board in the cant split, that board goes out conveyor and will be conveyed down a center line to where it'll be sorted according to the weighing on the board versus a board that's straight edge that won't need to be edged anymore. But we can take you down to the next step of the process.
So as we move down, we had another question about your labor and your workforce. If teachers are talking to their students about this type of career, what does your entry level position pay?
We could start anywhere from $16 and up. The workforce is really tough right now as far as competition. So it is a pretty competitive workforce out there right now to be able to get workers. But not only do we have the pay, but we also have benefits, very good benefits that would be attractive to new workers that come to us. Health benefits, 401k, profit sharing. We're also an ESOP company, employee owned. So after the boards are cut, they come to this next line here. After the boards are separated, they will be going through our edger. And this is an optimized edger. This was when I'll go through a scanner that has lasers that'll be able to take, as you will, a picture of the board and determine the best solution to be able to edge that board to the highest yield, the best yield of the board.
So this scanner is looking at a board that may have a rough edge that was, originally cut off that cant, and then it's scanning, imaging it, and then we're seeing up on the screen how it's going to make it a usable, saleable, consistent board.
And the saws will automatically move on their own according to the solution that the computer will tell it. After the boards do come out of the back of this edger, they will be merging with the boards that have already been sorted that had the square edges. So with all those boards coming together, they're singulated, and now they're on what we call the inspection deck. they're flipping the board and looking at both sides of these boards to give the board a grade, determining how clear it is for a value. The
So-
crayons that they're using in their sticks is putting in what we call the grade mark. And if there's any more trimming, it needs to be done with these boards.
And I think it's tough for our teachers at home to see, but there is a little crayon at the end of that, and you see him, you know, making a couple denotations. He is actually writing on the board. And so then that writing then tells them what to do with the next step of the process. And what does training look like for this piece of the job?
We will send our trainees to what we have an inspection class. It's a GLCU is what we have made, and we have an experienced instructor that we have that works for us in-house. It's been an employee for many years that will teach a individual that has virtually no lumber experience and get them to understand our industry, our culture, and how to grade lumber. And typically that class will take up to 2 months, 1 to 2 months. And then once they get out of that class, they will come out here and be able to start the hands-on training process, which could take up to several more months before they get onto this deck. And then once they're on the deck, it will take 2 to 3 years to get an inspector to be consistent enough without consistent coaching to be able to get to our standards here.
Now, because there's two of them, are they just checking each other's work? Is that what the second person is doing?
No, well, we could get up to 9,000 to 12,000 pieces of this lumber coming through just on a daily basis. And what they do is they skip every other board. So they have time to be able to make a right decision on a grade for the board.
So after they have graded the lumber, then what happens next? Who decides where those boards are going and how they'll be sorted?
This individual is loading the boards in a lug and do a standard trimming before they get inputted to the computer with our input station here. And then once it's inputted into the computer, which would be the grade and the trim mark, that board is in that lug that has more or less an address. And that lug will know where to put that board all the way up through the process until it's into the sorter and into a bay.
So we do have a question. They said as we transition to our next step in the process, you mentioned using wood chips as fuel for parts of this process. Does the mill use any of the tree or byproducts as an energy source for the mill to run on?
Yes, the sawdust will be transferred and separated and go into a silo. And after it's stored in the silo, it will be conveyed into our boilers. And those boilers produce steam. And that steam is transferred into coils that are in our kilns. And that will generate the heat that we utilize to dry our lumber.
And can you talk to us a little bit about a kiln? Why do you have a kiln, and why is that step really important for a lumber mill?
When we put lumber on sticks and air dry it, the the outside air will only take so much moisture out of lumber, regardless of how long it stays out in the normal weather or air. Once it drew all the moisture out that we can't get any more with just being outside, then we put into a kiln. And then we could put more heat to that lumber and draw out the more of the moisture until we get down to a 5 or 6% moisture content. These cans you see here are what we cut and we'll make pallets out of. This will go to a secondary operation that we sell these to. This is a type of pallet that these would be made of.
And how close or how far away are the pallet making companies that build these pallets and the mulch companies? Are they fairly close to Courtland?
Yes, actually, this is a company that we do own. It's Paul Bunyan Products, and they make the pallets out of our cans, and they also grind our mulch and sell our mulch to various companies and individuals.
I think one of the questions as we talk later with John Mueller and Matt Gutchess, we're going to have a chance to talk to them. So be thinking, teachers, about some questions you may want to ask about vertical integration with this company, because you're going to learn they do a lot, from stepping into the forest to making some of these, the processing that we're seeing here in the mill, but then having a pallet company also. I think there's a lot to learn or inquire about as we think about all the ways that you can, integrate a market.
These are just two mills that our smaller logs would go to for more production. Do the same process as the current mills that we looked at. They still have scanners. The optimizers will scan the logs for the best opening face. And our next process here is where the cans will be broke down into boards until we get to a point where there's no more value on that can. And then we'll make it into a sizable can to where we'll sell to make pallets. And this is actually the end for the waste that we have, such as edging, slabs. They'll come down this area and they'll be separated to sawdust with this vibrate conveyor. And then they'll go through this chipper, which will make our chips.
What you see here is our silos that house our sawdust and our smokestack for our boilers that will produce our steam for the kilns.
And about how much space do you take up in Courtland? If you have driven through Courtland, you have seen Gutchess. No matter, you have a pretty interesting footprint there, and especially being right in the city. So how much space do you take up?
Well, the road front, it'd be really deceiving if you drive by on our road front. But if you got into the plant, you'd see it's much bigger, and we're sitting on about 100 acres here. We do have a sizable pond out back, so that takes up quite a few acres, but it's a fairly sizable facility.
And so we saw the silos and we saw the steam. Are we coming up on one of your kilns right here?
Yes, this is a kiln right here. There's actually steam coming out of the top of it as we speak. These packs of lumbers that you see here will be staged and or set to go in one of these kilns once we have enough volume to fill one. This would be a stack of lumber, and give you an idea of how tall they are. These stickers right here is what we do to separate the lumber so we can get airflow to go through it and keep the support so the board has no movement, so it don't warp or twist or cup on us in the drying process. And we also have these packs covered at the very top to keep the rain, the snow off the top and seeping down through those packs.
And how long might that lumber sit for after it's been kiln dried? How long does it take to then move that lumber?
After it's kiln dried, there's the staining process has stopped, the molding process has stopped. So, but we do have to keep it under a roof and keep it dry. We can no longer let it weather or get rain on top of it. So once it comes out of kiln, we put it inside a building to keep it fairly dry. This is inside a kiln. Quite a bit of steam coming out of there right now.
We had a teacher who asked the word, what does the word cup mean? And I don't know if that's what you said, or maybe it was, maybe they misheard when we were out by the stacks.
It's when generally a board will lay flat. And if we draw the moisture out of the water out of a board too quick, that could make that board become unstable and cause it to curl up, as you will, from side to side.
And so then do you manage the transportation of the boards to your buyers, or do they come and pick them up?
This part right here is still in our secondary production side of it as far as the kilns. But once it's packaged and it's put into our storage sheds, kiln dried, we do have vendors that will come pick it up for several different trucks.
Excellent. Well, what other questions do our teachers have? We are just about at the end of the process and the end of our virtual field trip for this portion of our professional development today. What other questions do you have? Well, John, we cannot thank you enough for spending some time with us this afternoon, going through the mill tour. We appreciate all the time you took out of your, I'm sure, busy day with a lot of parts and pieces to manage. And thank you so much for talking about what you do.
Thank you.
Oh, we do have another question. One of our teachers wants to know what drives lumber prices.
The market conditions, just like any other commodity, it all depends on the market conditions. Right now, the markets are fairly well with lumber, and the demand.
And what did the pandemic do to your markets? Obviously, with the world being shut down for a while, what did that do to you and your workforce, and being able to ship to one of your biggest buyers, which is China?
when it first started out, it was pretty tough on us. The downturn, not only to the employees, but the shipment of the lumber. But in the last year, I think we've really made an upward swing. Last year was a good year for us, so I hope to continue that also.
And now we do have another follow-up question from that. They want to know, they have some brands. Is the lumber you're preparing for flooring, is it for places like MJ Carroll or for a laminate from like a lumber liquidators? That was a question that came in.
This is strictly hardwood, no lamination. It would be molded and placed down on a floor as a product of solid hardwood lumber.
Well, I think that comes, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is a packaged lumber. This would be ready to be shipped right here. It has our logo on it, has our bands on it. It does have our identification of what it is, 4/4 cherry. We paint the ends to keep any more moisture to getting into the lumber and to for a presentation also. We're very critical about the quality and the of the pags, and the quality has to be as far as the preparation, the squareness of the pags, these are packs here that you're looking at that's just been bundled up that need to be stacked.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your spending your day with us. We really do. We know you're busy guy. And so this has just been an awesome learning experience for us all day long. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
So at this point, we are going to let Jeremiah transition out from being there at the mill site, and we are going to spend some time together. So we are going to meet back with Jeremiah in a little bit. You'll get a chance to meet him for the first time if you haven't yet. But we're going to do a few introductions. So I am really excited to be hosting this virtual PD today. I'm Katie Carpenter. I'm the State Director of New York Agriculture in the Classroom. And just a little bit about Ag in the Classroom. So we are an outreach program of Cornell University. Our job is to help K through 12 teachers who have an interest in food and agriculture use food and agriculture as that lens for learning, taking the concepts that you're integrating already, you have to teach about, and helping you put a lens of ag on that, hopefully to get your students excited about the topic that you're covering, help make those real world authentic learning connections. And we try to do that in a whole lot of ways, but virtual PDs are one of our favorites, our professional development in general. We'll talk a little bit more about opportunities and extensions for learning that you can include in your classroom. But I would love to get to know you all a little bit more. We're glad you can join us, but I would love for everyone to do an introduction. And I think probably the easiest way to do that is just to start at the top of my list, and I'll call out a few people. So Alexis, would you mind saying hello? Just tell us what you teach, where you teach, and why you were interested in this virtual PD today. Here, we'll come back to Alexis. We'll let her get situated. Clayton, do you mind saying hello?
Hello, I'm Clayton Capoff. I teach 3rd grade in Oxford, New York, and I've done a lot of stuff with Ag in the Classroom, and I find it fascinating, everything that you guys offer. So I sign up whenever you guys offer something so I can see how I can use it in my classroom. third grade. I don't know how much logging we're going to be doing, but you never know. It might come up.
Excellent. Thanks. Good to see you. All right. Next, I have Sierra Dator. If you could help me with that pronunciation, and we'll let you go next and say hello.
Hi. Let's see. Yeah, I teach in high school in Queens, New York. And they gave me agriculture to teach this year, and I never taught it before. So I've taught biology, earth science, environmental science, ecology, but never agriculture. So I was luckily put in touch with, sorry, the phone is going off. I was put in touch with Sherry Lightfall, and she's been really helpful, and we got a grant. And so we're thinking they're going to build a hydroponic lab through New York Sun Works. And I'm just interested in like the urban agriculture aspect, like vertical farming, rooftop farming, and hopefully, you know, because I mean, that's a living people can make in the city. And with the, you know, sustainability for 2050, you know, you want to have more ways of feeding people. So I don't know, it's exciting.
Oh, that's really exciting. We're glad to have you here. You know, in a piece that's not part of this, because we are in Courtland today and not in Brooklyn, is that New York City has a really awesome group of urban foresters. So that is also kind of a cool connection with this PD. And what do urban foresters do, and how do they help? And you know, they have a lot of forests to manage, you know, and trees and plants to manage themselves. So yeah, I hope another cool career integration, even if you're not in a rural place. All right, so next I have Jen. I think I have two Jennifers. I have one Jen that's a guest. Do you want to say hello? Or we can let Jennifer Canale go.
All right, I'll go. Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm in New Hartford, near Utica. I teach biology and earth science here, and previously I was at the high school. The high school here is fortunate. We have ecology courses, we have AP ecology, so we have a lot of environmental stuff, not so much at our junior high. So I'm tackling the project. We have a big quad, and to me, the perfect integration is to hopefully get a big garden out there, tie it into food services. So I have this grandeur plan. And that is where I stumbled upon this website and some friends. So I'm really hoping to kind of tie in our normal everyday or science biology to the environment, to what they can do at home, to right outside our window. There's our garden. Let's use those plants for photosynthesis. So that's my big dream, and this is my first time joining. So thank you for letting me be here.
Awesome. Yeah, this is a topic that we have not covered previously, but we do a lot of aeroponic trainings, hydroponic trainings, so garden-based learning. So yeah, hopefully we'll see you many more times.
Yeah, and this is, I'm really, we just ended with ecology, and this is great into the whole, you know, climate change, how they help, the replanting. So this is wonderful. The students will be excited. Thank you very much.
Yeah, great. So next I have Jessica. Do you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Jessica Monaco.
Hi, I'm from Livingston Residential School in northern Sullivan County, north of Middletown, Orange County. And I've taught living environment and forensics in that for 16 years. And this year we had the opportunity to add intro to ag. So this has been great because every little thing I picked up from ag in the classroom, like with the Christmas tree, we did wreaths and all that with it. It was great to tie it in with that. Also with the living environment for classification. And now moving on, doing a little introduction to forestry next month. So this is great to add in. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica. Now I have a J Monaco. I'm not sure what the first name is. So
So there's two Jessicas, so I apologize. I'm Jessica Monaco. I teach 4th grade at Royalton Heartland Central School. And that's about, for anyone who doesn't know, probably about halfway between Buffalo and Rochester on Route 31. So we're in Western New York section of the state. This could not have come at a better time for my 4th grade students, not necessarily for the whole science aspect, but for social studies. We were talking about the explorers and how the explorers came to the New World and they found natural resources here that they didn't have back home, and one of them being timber. And the discussion was timber. What is timber? Like, we hear that called timber, but then for us to be able to experience it in the woods and then to go out and see it at the sawmill today, it was perfect. It cut into our social studies. It helped cement some learning today. So it was fantastic. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. That's already making some cool connections with your students. Thanks for being here. Johanna, you want to say hello? She may have stepped away, so we'll go to Megan. Megan, you want to say hi?
Hi, let's see, I don't know what camera on my school computer is like set up with Zoom, because we don't typically do the Zoom thing, so I'm not gonna waste time trying to get the camera. But I teach 7th grade STEM / agriculture at Port Service Middle School, and I just love all the professional developments that you folks put on. So I was excited to do this and be able to tie in with our, possibly bringing some stuff into this class that our tech teacher, does with like the wood shop kind of component of things and everything. So thank you very much for offering this up for us, because you guys do a great job.
Well, thanks, Megan. Megan's one of our superstars. We see her at all the PDs, so we're glad you're here, Megan. All right, how about Rachel? Rachel, you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Rachel Bennett. I teach at Tully Junior Senior High School. The pallet company that Gutchess was talking about is literally 5 minutes down the road from us here. So we are familiar with their products around here. So this works out really well. My consumer ag 8 students do a whole forestry unit. We talk about using the Biltmore stick, everything. And so attending the other student version of the PD was great the other day, because it really got the kids seeing the hands-on version. So hoping to take a little bit of what we do here and kind of fluff a little bit more into that unit that I've been working on with them.
Awesome, thank you. Glad to have you with us. Susan, you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. And Katie, I'm not sure too. I don't think I have a camera somewhere.
We see you. We see your eyes and your hair.
Because I see nothing. But in any case, and I'm not technically sound, but having said that, I teach 6th grade science at Hoover Middle School in Kenmore, New York. I've taken other classes from New York Agriculture in the classroom. I think they're fabulous and fantastic. What I wanted to really talk about is, deforestation and where the lumber and the processing. And I love to hear that he had mentioned about that he uses every scrap piece and so forth, because I run an environmental club that starts in the middle school, but actually these students do a lot at the high school level. So because high school students needed that background foundation and some excitement to want to join, that's my job. And so we are doing a lot with lumber within our own area, in the sense that the students are going to go out on field trips and to talk about, even the pencil. That's why I asked you about the pencils, because we find them all over the floor and they might chew up 3 or 4 a day. But really, where are we in the realm of things with trees? Is there a better way? Is everything being used from a tree that's being cut down? When is that? And so I was really specifically wanting to ask questions or hear about information that I can bring back to them in our next meeting and talk to them about what I learned here today.
Awesome. Now, Susan, did you get a chance? Oh, good. Oh, well, I'm so excited to hear all of that. But did you get to watch our last virtual field trip in the forest with the forester?
No, I did not.
Oh, we'll make sure to include that in the follow-up in case you all missed it. But I think your students would be really interested in that. That was a student virtual field trip. And later today, we'll get a chance to meet the forester. And yeah, we're going to talk with the owner of the company and a forester who's been with the company a long time. So they'll be able to talk about all of those pieces about forest ecology, about their process and how they take care of that land. But I think that you'll really enjoy the virtual field trip also.
I have a very quick question, please. And the reason
Yeah.
I can sign up for it is I teach the students in the club are 5th, 6th, and 7th. So our times are all different throughout the day. That particular virtual field trip you just mentioned, is that something that is accessible to me if you were to send me a copy of that?
Yeah, we'll include it in the follow-up. It's on YouTube.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was just last week. So yeah, it's very fresh. So we'll definitely send that out. Now I see we have Holly with us. Holly can't hear, but I think she's reading along. But Holly teaches in New Hampshire. She's a former agriculture teacher here in New York. So hi, Holly. And then Carly, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, I'm in transit right now to get my daughter, so I'll be on it a little bit. But
Okay.
so I teach agriculture at Penn Yan. I love doing the ag in the classroom PDs. I've used a lot of the lessons and like kind of lab activities that Jeremiah has shown. So I was super excited. I just finished forestry though in my enviro class, so this will be something on the docket for next year's class, but I can look at things. But great PD that you guys put on. I appreciate all that you guys do.
Awesome. Thank you, Carly. And I think Sarah Mcardle joined us. Sarah, you want to say hi?
Hi. Driving, so I just pulled over, don't worry. So I'm Sarah Mcardle. I'm a 3rd grade teacher in Burnox, Westerlo, which is the rural part of Albany County. I love ag in the classroom. I use a lot with my students. We have an after school ag pals club that is 3rd through 5th grade, kind of like a starter club for our FFA program, kind of get them interested. And they use a lot of the ag in the classroom activities every month that I have provided through awesome grants and all this professional development opportunities that you guys have given. So we do a lot of that. And yeah, so thank you.
Well, thanks for being with us, Sarah. Thanks for listening along. Sarah, again, another one of our superstar ag in the classroom teachers. So I love her. So thank you all so much for being here. So the next thing that we'll do, we'll actually transition to doing one of you have 2 lessons and 2 kits that were provided in your toolkit today. And the first one that we're going to do is the source search. Now, I really love this lesson because it's just great to set some context for your students. So we're just gonna move through a few pieces of this lesson that I think are important. So in the chat box, I have sent a Jamboard. So go ahead and click on that Jamboard. When you get on that Jamboard, you have 2 questions to ask. So go ahead and grab a sticky note, and on your sticky note, tell me what you ate today. And then go ahead and move to slide 2 up at the top and talk about some day-to-day items that you use today. I know Susan, she's going to put down pencils, but I want you all just take a moment. What have you eaten today? Give me that on one sticky note, and then make a list of some of the day-to-day items that you've used.
Katie, I think mine is view only, so I can't.
Oh, geez, I'm so sorry. This always happens with Google things. All right, we are going to make you all editors. Okay, I'm going to copy it, done. Just in case you need to try to refresh that or use that link I just shared. You should be able to type now.
Yeah, it's working.
Good. Google does me dirty sometimes, so I'm sorry about that. Right. I added a few of mine on both slides. Oh, everyone is all right. Oh, I'm seeing lots of coffee on here. Oh, somebody had an enchilada. I'm pretty jealous. All right, very good. Make sure you go to slide 2 also. Tell us about your day-to-day items. All right, so we're starting to see on both of these slides, as you're starting to reflect and think about your day, there are hundreds of items that we interact with, from the plates or trays that we use for the meals that we had, to getting in our car and driving to our workplace. We are interacting with hundreds of items throughout the day without even thinking about it. And so we really want to start thinking about what are the source of some of these items. And this is an activity where you are going to have a chance to do a little quiz or do a little brain bender. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you my screen, and you have a job. I'm going to get my screen shared right here, and you have a job, and your job is to put into the chat box. So have your chat box fingers ready. I'm going to make sure I can see your chat. All right, I can see everything here. You're going to have a job. You need to decide. I'm going to show you a bunch of different items. Now, as quick as possible, I want you to put in the chat box what you think the source of these items are. There's lots of different items. You'll have lots of chances. So I'm going to show you the options here. So we have a camera. What is the original source of the camera? And get your fast fingers ready. So what are the options? Store, farm, factory, or natural resource? What is the original source of that camera? All right, good guesses. I'm going to move to the next one. We're going to move pretty quick. And that's a natural resource. Interesting. All right, so what's the original source of a hamburger? Again, oh, sorry, I cheated on that one for you. Yep, the original source of a hamburger, that comes from a farm. Out of your 4 different choices. What's the original source of cat food? Again, store, farm, factory, and natural resources. Natural resources and farm. All right, let's see. That's a farm product. What's the original source of toilet paper? Store, farm, factory, natural resources. Answer is farm. Original source of cookies. All right. Farm. French fries. Farm, you bet. Fleece. Original source of fleece. If you had a fleece vest or fleece jacket. Oh, there's one different answer. Let's see. Natural resources. So that is think about it, that is a plastic product. made from polys. It's not made, it's not fleece that we wear in our vests is not necessarily made from a sheep. What's the original source of this blender? What are we going with? Store, farm, factory, natural resources. All right. You bet, natural resources. What is the original source of cheese? Yeah, you bet, farm. Fruit. Good job. Vegetable juice. Yeah, farm. What about salt? Good thinking, good thinking. Natural resources, it's a mined product. Cheerios. Yeah, farm. If you're out in the Buffalo area, you can, the whole city smells like Cheerios, right? All right, original source of a hot dog. A farm. Eggs. Yeah. What about this watch? Farm, factory, store, natural resources. Yeah. Natural resources. Water. You bet. All right, well, we're going to pause right there because you get the gist of this activity. At the beginning, I did see a couple responses where we talked about you know, some maybe you thought originally that camera came from a store, but when we think about the original sources of these items, yeah, it's one of two categories. It's either going to be coming from our natural resource that's being mined, or coming from something that's naturally occurring, or it's going to be coming from a farm. And now I think the interesting interaction is that a farm uses a lot of those natural resources to produce those farm-based items. So as we're looking at relationships of things to one another, it's all really well connected. And so in the lesson, you actually have four different, you probably saw 4 different baskets, and those are labeled our 4 different categories we were talking about. And then your students have to work to categorize all of these 36 different items. And so for them, they are really they might originally think that their iPhone or their iPad comes from a factory or comes from a store, but then you can really start taking those pieces apart. And something like a vehicle is super interesting because not only do you have the steel, the glass that originally comes from sand that you can talk about and explore all the plastic pieces, but in vehicles, we also have rubber tires. We know rubber comes from cotton. We have leather seats and leather steering wheels. That comes from a farm. So some of our products are both farm and natural resource occurring. So it really is a great way to begin to stretch and bend those brains. So, the way you can set up with your students, there's already created and available Kahoots and quizzes that you can share with your students to move through these activities, or use the great hands-on resources that you were provided. And then they can do relay race types games. They can do really quick sorting games. So it makes it a pretty fun experience for them. So we're excited to give you that source search activity. And we really think it's a way, as we talk about the timber industry, natural resources, renewable resources, and non-renewables, to help frame the conversation about how the timber industry is part of food and agriculture and fiber systems in our state. All right, so Before we move on, we're going to have your chance to meet with Jeremiah, get to know him, and also meet some of our friends at Gutchess. I want to share with you just a few tools and resources. That lesson that you just received is on our National Curriculum Matrix. So if you're on our website, you're going to scroll down here and you're going to be able to do searching. You can search any word that you want. And I'm just going to pop in the word dairy. So this is a keyword search tool. It's over 500 of the best lessons from across the country, all in one place for you. The beauty about this National Curriculum Matrix, our searchable lesson database, is that every single lesson has been vetted by a team of agricultural literacy specialists. Every single lesson is aligned to curriculum standards, and we're increasingly, making those alignments to next gen and doing some alterations to make sure they fit to next gen. So every single lesson looks exactly the same. You'll see all the materials that you need. If there's a PowerPoint included with a lesson you're interested in, if there's a worksheet, it's all included for you under Essential Files. Vocabulary is included. And the best part is, remember, we usually work with teachers who maybe don't have a ag background or not certified to teach agriculture. There's all this great background information for you. So then, of course, just as teachers, we know there's an interest approach. We have all of our procedures for each activity laid out, and every single lesson has hands-on learning components. So that's kind of the beauty of working with agriculture. Agriculture is innately hands-on, so we want to make sure your students have those hands-on learning opportunities also. Down here, these suggested companion resources. I said there were 500 lessons. We also have about 800 companion resources. These might be a standalone activity. It might be a multimedia resource. It might be a book connection. And with every lesson you're looking at, I call this like the Amazon piece, where it's like, oh, you like this? You might also like this. So for example, I might click on this Chuck's Ice Cream Wish. Oh, here's a great book that I may want to pair with that lesson. Every companion resources then, on the other hand, says, okay, here's some lessons you might like on this topic. So it's really helping to think with you. And then you also have an advanced search up here, so you can pare down what you're looking for to get pretty specific. So the matrix is here. It's free. It's open source for you to use. It's one of our gems of what we get to do. Now, what's happening in Ag in the Classroom right now? We just want to share some things that you might want to be aware of. Number one, if you like these professional development experiences, we would love for you to come to our National Agriculture in the Classroom Conference. We are hosting that conference for the first time ever in New York State. It's going to be in Saratoga Springs from June 28th through July 1st. We are going to be launching scholarships for you to attend that conference. The conference is unique because the first day you're there, you get put on buses and you get to actually go to farms and you get to talk with farmers and you get to look at food processing and fiber processing across the state. So that's a pretty exciting piece of that conference. Then you get awesome PD with over 650 others from across the country. We just selected our workshops the other day, and we're really excited that there'll be some great New York presenters who will be part of that experience, along with people from across the country who are experts in this field and use food and ag in their classrooms every single day. You should also know that we have currently registration is open for our maple contest. Each year we do a maple syrup contest where you get to make maple syrup with your students. We have an elementary, middle, and high school division. And really, this is just about you making syrup with your kids. If you are one of the first 50 teachers to sign up, you will get a kit to help you make maple syrup in your classroom. You'll get sap bags, holders, a tapping bit. You'll get spouts, you'll get a hydrometer, and even a test cup to test your syrup. And you send those samples into us, and your classroom can win some prizes. We always try to think about how we can add art in agriculture. And we are going to have a photography contest included also. So if your students are taking photos, if you're taking photos, you can submit those photos to win an additional $50. And they'll be part of an exhibit at View Arts in Old Forge. So your students will get to go see their work hanging in a gallery, which is very neat. With that,
I'll say, Katie, my kids absolutely love the maple stuff, and they were so excited last year that we got second. So, like, we just do a small amount, guys. You really don't need a whole lot, and the kids absolutely love it. And that hydrometer lesson is awesome too. I love it.
Thanks, Carly. Yeah, so we pair, and share a lot of great lessons that are already existing. And the one Carly's talking about, you actually make your own hydrometer so the students understand how that works. The cool part about making syrup with your students is they get really invested in it. They really get excited. They grasp vocabulary super quickly because they're learning while they're doing. And so that's really the crux of what we do. So we have a lot of other tools and resources. Those are that's the highlight reel for the moment. I'm going to check in with Jeremiah. Jeremiah, are you there?
I am here, Katie. It's nice to be in this warm conference room. So
Jeremiah's been outside all day, but at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jeremiah to introduce our guest. And I know I have a great question from Sue that we'll definitely get to, but we're excited for this next discussion. So thank you all so much for being with us.
So good evening. It's great to see you all here with us. I am the man behind the camera, so I was with you for the last 50 minutes or so, and with many of your classes all day long. And we're always excited to spend our time with educators. I was my educator myself, elementary educator, before I joined New York Agriculture in the Classroom. For many of those who don't know me, I was a 5th grade teacher, 3rd grade teacher. Really love education, and we were able to teach through the lens of agriculture. And I know many of y'all are doing such a great job doing that in your classrooms, and we're glad that many of y'all have joined us to learn how to do that if you haven't really jumped on this pedagogy. But as part of our training, one of the things that we love to do is talk to the professionals in the field. We think this is a great opportunity for you as educators to speak with these professionals that have done it all their life, and really, ask those real questions of the different concepts that we're teaching. So of course, we're within the timber industry. So I would like to introduce Mr. John Mueller, who is the Gutchess Forester, and Mr. Matt Gutchess, who is the president of Gutchess Lumber. And we're going to ask them some questions, but as we are talking with these two gentlemen this evening, feel free to put those questions that you might have in chat, or raise your hand and unmute yourself. We want you to ask any questions that you have that have to do with the timber industry, any maybe things that you have learned or heard about. If you think there's some misconceptions out there, we definitely welcome that. So I will let them start by first letting Mr. Gutchess share his history with the company, and who he is and what he does.
Okay, thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Gutchess, 5th generation Gutchess in the Gutchess Lumber Company. We started in 1904. That's the first year that we have a record of the company. We have a photograph, some horses bringing some logs and over to a small mill. It's run by my great grandfather, George Gutchess. We may have existed before 1904, but we don't have any records, so we tend to consider that our founding date. The company was located here in Courtland County, Central New York. In the 1950s, we settled on our current location right here as our central location. And my grandfather was getting into the business at that time. His major innovation was to develop wood drying technology. And previous to that, you know, furniture manufacturers in the U.S., primarily, you know, North Carolina was a big area for furniture manufacturing, but they all dried their own lumber. So my grandfather thought, well, if he could figure out how to dry it himself, he wouldn't just be, you know, kind of dealing with North Carolina. He'd be able to send lumber all over the world. So he, over the course of a long career, he built 29 dry kilns here in our Courtland plant. He also built a drying plant in western Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh. Another 25 kilns there. So he was a real innovator, and the business grew, you know, rapidly throughout his career, particularly in the 80s and 90s. International demand for U.S. hardwoods grew by leaps and bounds through those periods. You know, it's been an exciting, you know, growth trajectory that we've had, you know, really, again, since the 80s, we've gone from this one site here in Courtland to 7 sites today. Some we built from the ground up, others we acquired, you know, sawmills, dry lumber plants, wood yards, pallet manufacturing. You know, I began in the business full time right at the downturn there back in 08-09, the Great Recession. Business was finally hard enough that I thought I would get involved in it, and came in, and you know, it was pretty rough going for a year or two with just the economy being so poor. But since then we've done well, and we've built a very strong team here in this company. You know, some of the things I enjoy about my work here, you know, one is the obvious challenge. You know, there's a lot of competition, a lot of issues in the industry, but I really get excited about two things I think that we bring, you know, Gutchess Lumber brings, our whole industry brings to our region. One is an economic benefit. You know, I think we all know that the U.S., you know, we import, you know, tremendous amounts of goods. So we're sending, you know, money out to other countries, you know, China, a number of other places, and bringing products back. We do the opposite. We're actually taking money from these other parts of the world, bringing them back, and we're putting it back into our communities. You know, we're putting it into paychecks for our employees. We're putting it into payments for timber and logs, our regional farmers, you know, all across New York State. We're using these, you know, foreign dollars to promote our own communities across New York and Pennsylvania. So we're sort of a counterweight to a lot of the, you know, the trend for large trade deficits and so forth. And I enjoy that, and I enjoy being able to develop, you know, these renewable products that we have. It's not like, you know, you're taking advantage of a resource that you can't replace. You can replace it. You can send it overseas and bring, you know, hard currency back, you know, for the benefit of our local economy. You know, the other thing that I get excited about is the environmental benefit that we are providing. Mentioned sustainability, but you know, these trees, when they're cared for properly, when these woodlots are cared for properly, and John is, you know, an expert in this area, but you know, we can, you know, a managed forest is able to regenerate itself much more rapidly than an aged forest, in which, you know, the canopy is closed, the sun, you know, sunlight doesn't reach the ground, new trees can grow, but it's a much slower process. Whereas we're able to open up that tree stand, allow the sunlight to hit the forest floor, promote rapid growth of new trees. And what does that rapid growth do? It pulls carbon out of the air, and it pulls it out of the air much more rapidly than a mature standing forest can do. So we're encouraging that. through removal of the, the overstory trees. But then it's even better than that, because we're, instead of that wood just decaying in the forest and the carbon going back into the atmosphere, we're putting it into furniture, into flooring, into stair treads, cabinets, all kinds of finished products, which, they stay around for a long time. Maybe you only use, cabinets for 25, 50 years, and then they're replaced by something else. Well, that cabinet doesn't just get thrown away. It's usually put in a landfill and buried, and, you've sequestered carbon, indefinitely in many cases. So it's this powerful engine of carbon sequestration and new growth of new trees that we're really able to accomplish. So it's really a great story with an economic and an environmental component to it, which I find fabulous. I'd be hard pressed to go and find another line of work or business that could accomplish all this. So that's kind of my introduction.
So John, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history? And I think Matt definitely covered some very important topics that are taught throughout our school with that carbon sequestration. And we're talking about climate change constantly. So can you just introduce yourself and just what you do as a forester, and kind of elaborate a little more on some of these concepts?
Thank you, Jeremiah. Yes, so I'm a forester for Gutchess Lumber. I was hired by Matt's grandfather to come here in 1988 to manage company timberlands, which we own about 30,000 acres of forest land here in New York State and Pennsylvania, and also to purchase timber from private landowners. I have a degree, an associate degree in forest technology from Morrisville, SUNY Morrisville, and then later I went on and got a Bachelor of Science at SUNY ESF at Syracuse. I worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Forest Service, for a couple of years in the state of Idaho. And so I bring a little bit of experience of the managing Western forests. So I come from a farming background just south of Syracuse, and I enjoy being in the forest. I like to see a forest. They're a wonderful, wonderful place. As a forester, I am also a member of the Society of American Foresters, and I'm a certified forester under their certified forester program. So to be a forester, it's just like, I think in some ways like a teacher. It's an art and it's a science to manage a forest. And it's important, and I think it's important. There's two things I think about forests, is they're dynamic and they're renewable. And what I mean by dynamic is they're ever changing. Sometimes we think a forest is, that's it, that's the state they're always in. But that's not the case. Mother Nature has other ideas for it. We see forest fires out west. We see some here locally. We see ice storms. We see big blowdowns, forest blowdown because of wind. And those are kind of the fun things about forestry, is it's changing. And you get to see a different forest almost every day. And that's what I enjoy about our forests here.
So before we get a little more into the conversation, I want to open it up. Any teachers, we've heard a little bit about sequestration and dynamic forest. Are there any questions that you might have from Matt or John?
Well, Susan had a great question earlier, so I told her I didn't want to lose her question. So I'm going to ask what she wrote, but then Susan, feel free to jump in for any other thoughts you might have. So she said, you mentioned that 800 to 1,000 logs were coming into your facility per day or per week. I'm just wondering the amount of time these logs were growing before your company decides that they should be cut down, therefore trying not to have deforestation happening so quickly. Is your company responsible for planting the new trees for the next time you want to harvest them?
Great question. So for a mature tree, it takes between from a seedling all the way to it's ready to be harvested. It's between 80 to 120 years for that tree to be, I'm going to say, economically valuable. Now, biologically, that tree could, of course, grow a little bit longer, but for the tree and the tree growth, that tree reaches its maximum economic viability between 80 to 120 years old. Depending on how you structure your harvest, how the landowner wants to manage that forest, will determine how that forest regenerates. And there's certain patterns, harvesting patterns, that we use to get certain trees to regenerate. If we wanted to grow black cherry, for instance, in central New York, for us to get black cherry to grow, we need to open the stand up and get sunlight to hit the floor, the forest floor. Because just like the cherries that you buy at a grocery store, that that cherry pit falls to the ground for black cherry, and it can sit there. And they've had some research, it can sit there for 50 years as a seed, viable, until it has the right conditions around it for it to germinate and start to grow. So if an individual wants to grow black cherry on their forest, then we need to open a stand up, let the sunlight hit the forest floor. That rises the soil temperatures and makes a microclimate for that seedling to start growing. If we wanted to grow maple, we don't have to open the stand up very much. We can leave it closed because it's what they call a shade tolerant species. It can grow in a kind of a shaded area, and that needs for that seedling to grow. I got to give you one quick story. When I first came in '88, there was a forester here by the name of Maynard Spencer. He was here since the early 50s. And I go to Maynard, I said, Maynard, it seems like this company uses a lot of logs and we think we deplete the resource. And he said, John, that's a good question. But he said, when I came here in the late 40s, early 50s, I asked the forester before me. And he told me that, the trees grow. And here Maynard had his whole career from the 50s all the way until 1990. When I came, 1988, his whole career buying timber, managing timber. And here I am in my career, and I've gone 33 years and I constantly find timber. So that dynamic of forests, that's because it grows. It grows maybe 2%, 4% a year. And not all the forest is cut down at one time. And what's interesting about New York State is in about 1880, 1890, 75% of New York State was already cleared. Just after the Civil War, 1890, 75% of New York State was all cleared. There wasn't any forests. And now here we are, 65 to 70% of New York State has forest cover. And so the forest can come back. And it's dynamic and it's changing. And it took some people with some foresight in 1900, 1910, when the conservation movement started, where we needed to put away the Adirondack Park and different areas on our state forests. So,
well, the other factor there, I think a lot of people think of forestry and they think of, practices in the Amazon or, other tropical areas where logging is done and trees are removed and then the land is converted to other uses, right? But in the eastern U.S., when we are logging and we're removing trees, we're not changing the use of the land. That land is still forest. We're leaving, many trees. We're leaving seed trees to do some of what John just explained. Trying to regenerate cherry or hard maple. We're leaving seed trees, we're leaving other trees to protect the new trees, from wind damage and so forth. So that land is still forest, even after a relatively heavy logging. So we're not actually converting forest into non-forest. And in fact, we'd we'd be happy to see the opposite. We'd be happy to have even more than, than 65, 70% of the state forested.
We harvest timber all over the state. Some of the places, I know we have a teacher from New York City or down that way. We harvest timber around the reservoirs that supply water to New York City. The reservoirs are up in the Catskill region of New York. We harvest timber around those reservoirs in a sustainable way, and they find out the water quality can be better if the forest is managed than if it was just left to let nature do what it has. So we harvest timber around Gloversville watershed, Herkimer watershed, Utica watershed. We've harvested timber on all those watersheds that supply water to all those towns and cities. So it's beneficial for it. And as Matt mentioned, a lot of people say, well, deforestation down in South America is like it here. It's not, because really the soil types, the soils in the temperate United States, the nutrients are locked up in the soil. And there is some in the carbon stored in the organic matter, but in South America, the soils are different. There is no nutrients in the soil. Most of the soil is locked up in the biomass. So when you remove the biomass, you remove all the nutrients. Where here in the temperate forest, once you remove some of the trees, you're not removing the nutrients out of the soil. Two totally different soil types, and they react differently.
And I know that's definitely a concept that many of us teachers address in our classrooms and in our next generation science standards is soils and soil health. And that's definitely something that is very important to foresters. So I think we have another question from a teacher. Go ahead. Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so when you harvest the timber or the trees, you don't like, okay, this acreage, we're going to cut all these trees down and then replant them at the same time. It's more not just whole cutting it down all in one area and then replanting.
So there's by the way, I had a person that I went to school with at ESF, graduated as a forester, and he's a forester in Central Park right now. So there's jobs out there for foresters all over the United States. So he's a forester in Central Park. He manages those elm trees down there, and that's kind of interesting. But to get back to your point, so there's two systems that are used to manage our hardwood forests. Those are the trees that we use. The softwoods management is a little different. Hardwood forests, we manage them two ways. We can manage them what they call even age, and there's another system called uneven age. Even age forests, if managed, its even age is like a crop of corn growing up all at one time. All the trees are the same age. There's very few other size trees or other age classes of trees. And when you harvest trees like that what you call, when they clear all the trees, they may clear all the big trees, but they don't clear and they manage for all the small trees that are coming up. So even though you look at the forest and say, well, I don't see any big trees because they cut all the big trees down, there's still a high number of stems per acre of small trees that in 80 to 120 years are going to be a big tree. That's even age forest. Uneven age forest is when you go in and you maybe select only 10 trees or 15 trees on an acre of land out of a possibility of 200 trees per acre. So there may be 200 trees per acre. You're only going to remove a small portion of those. That's uneven age management. In New York State, the DEC has determined most of our forests are even age forests. So there's two different ways of managing it, but there's always trying to put trees on the acre of land. Sometimes they're a little small, and sometimes they're huge. You can't get your arms around.
Because I was wondering, like with the Christmas tree industry, they tend to like, a whole field would be one acre, and they harvest them. So I was just wondering, with that kind of constant harvesting, it may take 15 years before they harvest.
Yes.
Does that deplete the soil?
That's a great question too. So that with the Christmas trees, they sometimes put fertilizer on a Christmas tree farm, but them removing that tree, that's really not removing a lot of nutrients. It's removing carbon.
Right.
The carbon is, of course, taking CO2, combining with water with a little bit of nutrients and producing cellulose. And so when you see that big tree go and the size of those trees, you say, wow, that's a lot of nutrients leaving a site. It really isn't. And it also, a lot of nutrients are in the leaves and the twigs, and those are left in the woods for them to rot down and produce nutrients for the future forest.
One more question about like disease or pest or invasive species. Do you find that's any issue with the climate change?
I didn't quite.
Is that an issue with climate change?
Climate change.
Disease or pest or invasive species in the forest?
So,
yeah, I don't know. I guess I think that there probably are connections. There are invasives which have come in to the country, and as the climate changes, that does impact the way different insects can spread. But really, they're two simultaneous processes going on at the same time. We have battled in New York, of course, different invasive insects. One being the emerald ash borer, which attacks our ash trees and it kills them quite rapidly. This insect came from Asia back in the late 90s. Kind of spread attacked in the upper Midwest, kind of spread into Western New York, central pretty well most through New York State. And it's unfortunate because this is such a beautiful species of tree, but it's caused a lot of damage. And I know that there are efforts ongoing to crossbreed different types of ash, hope of coming up with something that can resist. But it's been a real challenge, really, for the whole region. And John can speak to this better than I can, but that insect is tolerant of a wide range of climate. I think extreme colds, when it's 30 below or more can wipe it out, but we don't really get that in New York, and of course it's less extremely cold all the time. So that's the major invasive insects that we've dealt with. There are other invasive plants which affect our forests, can compete with the natives, trying to grow back up. Sometimes the deer are very prevalent across our state, and they will chew up, the maple seedlings that we're trying to regenerate, but they'll leave the invasives, which they have no taste for. They'll leave those right there on the ground. So you wind up with a whole ground of invasives. Serious challenges for us. We look at different possible solutions. Keeping the deer out of woodlots has been shown to really help with the regeneration. It's just coming up with practical ways to do that, on a large scale. But something we're working on.
So I know we're running short on time. We do have another lesson that we'll quickly talk about. I want to give you, Matt, just one chance or just a quick opportunity. We did have a question. You could quickly respond. If teachers want to come and take a tour with their students or tour with John, would that be something that Gutchess would be open to doing?
We'd not only be open, we would welcome the opportunity. We'd love to show what we do here and explain the process from beginning to end. That'd be fantastic.
And now for young people who want to get into the industry, who might want to be a forester, might want to learn how to log, go to ESF or Paul Smith, is there anything that Gutchess does for those students?
We do have a scholarship at SUNY ESF up in Courtland that we've maintained for years, and we are always looking, to recruit out of forestry schools. We've recruited many people in the company, not just foresters, but that is a great opportunity to come to work for a company like ours with some knowledge already and get a jump start on a career.
Well, awesome. I want to thank you both. I think that was very insightful, a great opportunity for us educators to just dip into the world of timber. I want to quickly flip the camera. Finally get to meet me. Hi, nice to see you. We did send a couple lessons, and our professional development kit that we sent this time around, we did include many of the items that we placed in our virtual field trip inquiry boxes. So if you haven't done our virtual field trips, we usually try to send an inquiry box so that your students can get a sensory feel for the different places that we're engaging and heighten their senses. So one of the things I wanted to point at is Mr. Gutchess showed you this slab, and this is the first cut of the lumber that comes in, and it's a great chance to do a sequencing lesson, especially with ELA. We did include a hardwood. This would be the second cut, and this would be the finished lumber. So it's a great ELA activity with your students to write those sequencing paragraphs. And then you also have a compare and contrast with walnut and maple, really to look at those species. We did send you a lesson in your kit. How many people, if I could see a show of hands, got a chance to open their kit and got to dig in?
I just got it today.
Awesome. Well, I think we definitely loaded you up at this PD, and we really look forward. We really look forward to seeing you all at additional PDs. So this kit, the Planet Zorcon kit, if you want to reorder the kit, comes from our Ag in the Classroom store, which you can find online, but it's focused on management. And I think both of our guests or our hosts today would really identify that we have a lot of concerns globally about where our planet's going and where things are going. And a lot of these outcomes that we are facing have to do with the way we have managed our resources. And this kit really helps your students really identify how we can start managing resources. It focuses on having to go to another planet because we have overused or mismanaged our resources here on Earth, and how do they harvest those. So it's an amazing kit. Hopefully you'll have a chance to dig in. Does anybody have any questions who have maybe had an opportunity to look into it? No. So we have, as both gentlemen will probably definitely identify, it's really the focus, and I think they both hit on the fact that it's about management, and something that spending time with Gutchess and with their employees, being in the forest with some of the foresters, there's really a focus on how we conserve our environment. I think in many of your classrooms, you're really doing a great job in having your students really kind of capture that concept. So before we let y'all go, I know Katie is probably gonna want to share a few last steps in getting those CTLA credits and then discussing a few other things from New York Ag in the Classroom.
Thanks, Jeremiah. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to both Matt and John. I will say they are one of the most, I work with a lot of groups in agriculture, but they are one of the most open and welcoming companies that I get the pleasure to work with. We've been working for a long time to try to get these experiences set up, and now having our team expand, adding Jeremiah to it, and then being able to just, with a pandemic at the state that it is in this place, to be able to bring teachers and students to experience both the forest and what happens at the mill. We're just so grateful to them to build those ag literacy connections with the pieces that they interact with every single day. So thank you both so much. Bottom of my heart, it's always a pleasure to work with you. We also just want to talk about what are the next steps here. So you are going to receive an email in the next day or so with follow-up from this day. You are going to have links to all of our virtual field trips that we offered the last week and this week. You're going to get a link to today's PD if you missed anything or wanted to revisit something. And then you're going to receive links to the 2 lessons, both Source Search and Planet Zorcon, that Jeremiah was talking about, with all the instructions on how to facilitate those experiences in your classroom. The other thing that you're going to receive is you're going to receive an evaluation. The last page of that evaluation, it's a short evaluation, so don't be too scared of it. The last page is going to be the information we need to process your CTLE. So that's going to be the most important link in your follow-up. Fill that out and we will process your CTLE and send that out to you. It's going to come from our program assistant, Sarah Hale. She'll send that directly to you. Again, we just are excited to see you integrate our programs and tools and resources in your classroom. We are excited to see what you do next. And again, we'll also include John's outreach information. He works really great with outreach of anyone who wants to learn more about Gutchess and forestry and what happens at the mill. So you'll be able to reach out directly if you wanted to schedule that tour. Any final questions before we end today?
Can I ask a question, please?
Yes, please.
So I'm just trying to understand the biomass problem, the Amazon forest you mentioned, compared to our biomass. Is it because of the levels of the forest and it's the canopy that is not giving enough sunlight to the roots of the trees? Because I know that we're losing a lot of that in the Amazon forest. And then you had said that your company does it differently in the tree planting and so forth, and that we have better biomass. I was a little
Okay, so yeah, I can maybe clarify that a little bit better. Is that the biomass can be in the ground. There's nutrients and there's biomass. In our temperate forest, there's almost as much biomass in the ground as there is above the ground in the tree. So that's generally what you find. And then you go down into South America and the tropical forest, a lot of their biomass is above the ground. I mean, they do have root systems, of course, but the nutrient cycling, there's very little nutrients in the soils. I think they're called eustasols, and that's the soil type. I think there's very little nutrients in the soil itself, and but up here in the temperate forests, the nutrients are in our soils. So when you remove a tree, if you remove a tree, and for us, we just remove the log, you think of that, a volume coming off, there's not a lot of nutrients removal on that. I know the College of Environmental Science and Forestry have done studies about that nutrient removal, and it's not very much removal from a forest by just taking out the logs.
And one other quick question. I was thinking that I had a tree cut down on our lawn because of a bug that had gotten into it. And for your cutting of the trees that we saw in the plant, are you leaving the roots, or are you cutting it and there's a stump left? I'm just curious, how is that tree taken out of the soil that you have that you're using?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We remove just the upper portion. So the root systems and the stump are left about a foot and a half above the ground. That is left in the soil, that's left on site. It's not removed, and it just stays there for it to rot and to decay. And the tree itself then is brought out as a tree, cut up into logs and brought to the mill.
Which helps to keep the soil intact, right?
Yes.
You have much less risk of erosion that way when you're leaving those strong root systems in place.
And I know from our Christmas tree virtual field trips, definitely go back and check those recordings out. One of the reasons they leave those stumps is it also returns nutrients. So they'll plant right next to, like on a Christmas tree farm, they'll plant right next to a stump of a Christmas tree that they have harvested, because that is going to give them a boost with returning some of that nutrients to the soil. Is it the same with hardwoods? There's nutrients that
there is some, yeah. And for hardwood regeneration, we don't plant hardwoods, or very little. For deciduous trees, that means for the trees that lose their leaves, the deciduous hardwood trees, the pattern that we use to harvest the trees propagates and regenerates. We want the genetics of the trees that are on the site to propagate the site for the future crops. And depending on how we set up the pattern of harvesting will determine what those genetics are going to be and what trees are going to be. So we pay a lot of attention to how we set up the harvest and what trees we're trying to promote. Where the softwood trees that we see are in a lot of the softwood stands in New York State. We have some native, of course, spruce and white pine, but some of the other plantations that are on state forest land, they've been planted. It's Norway spruce, red pine, Scotch pine, European larch. So a lot of the reforestation areas in New York State are planted by and not naturally regenerated.
Right. Any other final questions? Well, again, thank you all so much. Thank you to our hosts. Thank you to our teachers. Thanks to Jeremiah for being out there in the cold today. We are excited to see what you do next. So thanks for being with us, everyone.